All right. Hey, Smack 'em a gob. I'm pretty sure we're live, right, Tony? It's like a trick
Yeah,
thing. I don't know when we're live or not.
yeah. I need to
But
gotta pull up.
we are live, right?
I'm pulling up Almost Human just to make sure. Let's see. Yeah.
So
Yep.
everybody, it is Thursday night, and this is a real good one. Tony, tell us who we have here tonight.
This is my good friend Richard Johnson. Richard used to be a truck driver with Upstage, and I think he still does it occasionally. But I met Richard. What year was it we met? We were probably about 2004 or five or something.
I think it was five, four.
4 or 5. Yeah, I met him. He was driving for Ozfest, and
You're
I was working a
Slipknot.
gig.
It's the year
And
Slipknot on it.
yeah,
Slipknot was on Ozfest on the B stage. I think it's four.
so that's Ralph's favorite band, Slipknot, But but
Well,
yeah, we met, we started talking, and he's a huge fan and collector like I am and like Ralph is. And Richard and I just hit it off, and we started trading stuff, and we were trading records and CDs and bootlegs and all kinds of stuff, man. He's a huge fan of Sabbath and metal and hardcore punk and all kinds of stuff. And he just a big collector like myself. So we hit it off, and he
Tony had reviewed my band from the
yeah,
90s.
yep, yep, it was funny. He was in a band from Atlanta called Bible Belt Byproduct. It's
Right?
hard to say that six
Well,
times fast.
you say it
And
10 times and keep your heels. Yep.
is I had reviewed his band in a zine. We started talking. He's like, yeah, I was in this band, Bible Belt Byproduct. Oh yeah, right, that's right, I remember that now. But yeah, so Richard drove for Upstaging for years for different bands, worked a lot with Sabbath. I remember we had met, and we were in contact with each other for a couple of years. Then I kind of like almost lost contact with you for almost like a year or something.
Yeah.
And I'm at Radio City Music Hall for the
Yeah.
Heaven and Hell show, and I've got like shitty seats for the show. Me and my wife at the time, and we're standing in line. And I hear somebody go, "Dio, Tony Dio, Tony." He's standing out by his truck because he was driving for that show. He brought in equipment for that show. And we walk over talking, and it's like, damn, I wish I knew you were here. I could have hit you up for better seats.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened though. That was tough ticket to get.
Yeah, yeah. But it was a trip that he was there. So we reconnected, and we've been pretty much in contact ever since, man. And
Right.
he's hooked me up on several shows through the years, when he was out driving, and he's got a lot of good stories, man. He's
I dug that out digging for laminates today. That's my pass for that tour. So
yeah, you were out on the Metal Masters, I remember. And so, and like I said, Richard's a big fan too. He's told me stories about growing up in Atlanta and seeing all the shows that came to Atlanta, to the area, and telling me, I mean, he went out when Sabbath did those farewell shows, supposedly, and Rob Halford opened up Sabbath with Rob Halford open for Ozzy. What was that, Costa Mesa, California? You went to both shows?
That was my birthday, Costa Mesa. Yep. Yeah. November 15th, 92.
Yeah. So
and then it came when Rob sang in August of 04. I was there working. I was driving on the tour. So Rob sang for Sabbath twice, and I was there both times. Pretty weird. But
wow.
Yeah. But yeah,
man, that's a great concert memory, isn't it?
yeah, for sure. I remember you told me when you were out on the Heaven and Hell tour, that last tour. I mean, we saw one of the last dates of the tour as it was in Maryland, and Richard hooked me and my buddy up, and we're like backstage afterwards, just hanging out. Ronnie and Vinny and all are hanging out. But Richard was telling me about, just Ronnie would just come sit in the truck with you and stuff, man.
Yeah, Vinny a lot. Ronnie, Vinny. I've had Rob Halford in there. I got that photo of Rob But
Driving your truck. Yeah.
yeah, shooting the bird, being super trucker. But yeah, um, but yeah, and I got a good friend of mine who worked here shows, and all those years of Ronnie touring, he'd never seen him, and he called me the same show you did in Meriwether Post. He said, "What's the closest one to Atlanta?" And I said, "Cincinnati." And he said, "I can't do that." But he drove to Meriwether Post, and that's he. I'm glad he did because that ended up being after Meriwether. We went to like Boston, New York, Atlantic City. That was it. That was the last shows Ronnie ever did. So you did see one of the last ones.
Yeah.
Nobody ever. He was struggling with cancer and in serious stomach pain either. So he was in extreme pain. He
that
didn't
la-
show.
that show that we were at in Maryland, I remember we were hanging out afterwards, and Ronnie said, "Hey, you guys want some beer? I
Yeah.
got some beer in my dressing room. You can have it." Because I hadn't been drinking a lot. My stomach's all fucked up. And
Right.
he gave us some bottle. That was that Bottleton's English
Body.
ale and the
Bell. Yep.
Boddingtons or whatever. That sounds like it's got like paint. Sounds like a can of paint when you shake it, spray paint. Yeah,
Yep.
that was
It's got
crazy.
a baffle in it. Yep.
I wish I'd got him to sign one or something and just kept it. But we went back to the room and drank it back to the hotel. Like we're drinking Dio's beer. But yeah,
Yeah. Love that
another
stuff.
cool another cool story, Richard. If you guys have seen the Heaven and Hell live at Radio City Music Hall DVD, they interview some fans and stuff, and they interview Richard because he's got the Pope on the rope is one of his tattoos. You want to tell us about how that came about?
Well, I was on the tour and in rehearsals for that in Vancouver. Apparently, Ronnie had told them to interview me because they were just going around interviewing random stagehands, and none of the touring crew really seemed to know anything about Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio. And I guess Ronnie pointed them my way, and Ronnie's also the reason I ended up on the DVD, I'm told. So God bless Ronnie James Dio. But I sort of made light of it. It was a long 2 30-minute interviews, and they kept probably like maybe 10 seconds of each one, put it on the DVD, bonus features. One, I had the tattoo. I joke about that being a Geezer Butler tattoo. And then they show it on camera. And then the other was I said, they do their best work together, Ronnie and Tony Iommi. And they left that in there too, I noticed. But there's a lot more filmed from that DVD that didn't make it. They were in the truck with me when I parallel parked at Radio City Music Hall. They did a lot more interviews. Like the main was in Vancouver. That's the one they spliced up. They did another one in Montreal, or I think, or Toronto, but they didn't use any of that one. So I always hope when it went to DVD Blu-ray that they would put more stuff, but I don't think the DVD the Blu-ray has more stuff on it that I'm aware of.
No. Who knows where that footage is at? They just probably sifted through it and
Yeah,
put
I
something
know.
together. But yeah,
I asked Lorenzo, band of the Monitor guy for Dio for years. Why did they choose me? Because he called me kidding him. Oh, you're a film star now. You're gonna be famous. And I said, why'd they keep me on there? And he said it was Ronnie. Ronnie made sure that he told him to keep that guy in there because I've met Ronnie when I was a kid here. I wasn't in the business. I worked fast food. I knew nobody in the business. People that worked in music were like gods to me. You know, these people have a pass. I knew nothing about the rock hierarchy. I'd see somebody with a sticky pass and think they're, blessed. And so I went from waiting outside in freezing cold, to meet Ronnie and to working for him and having him come up and hug me and, you know, do all kind of special stuff for me. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff. And but it was pretty cool. I miss the guy. But yeah.
What was the year you started working with Ronnie and Sabbath?
Well, I started touring as a driver in the winter of '99. Okay, so I started working as a driver, and I ended up working the first few years like sorry, working for like Bob Dylan. I did two ACDC. I did both legs of Stiff Upper Lip. I did Sheryl Crow for a year. Um, Red Hot Chili Peppers for a year, almost Beastie Boys, all this bullshit. But anyway, and so I would always go to see Ronnie, and I knew he used one upstaging truck. That was the company, and he always had certain guys. And I knew by that point, after years of seeing Ronnie since the '80s, I knew Willie Fife, his original assistant, you know, and Ronnie knew. And another amazing thing about Ronnie was you would meet him and like he would come back a year later and he would like, oh yeah, you're Richard. Oh yeah, you're Eric. You're John. He knew everybody's name. It was really pretty impressive.
Wow.
And so the touring I was doing was pretty big stuff. And Ronnie had a dedicated like sort of he liked familiar faces. And so I don't even know if he was aware that I worked for the company for a lot of time. And then I went to see Lock, not Lock Up the Wolves, um the the concept album Magica. I went to see that tour, and and I told him I worked for Robert, the owner of the company, and he's like, oh man, maybe one day if the guy driving was Bruce, he said maybe one day if Bruce retires, you can drive for me. I'm like, yeah, 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 but it never happened. And then years later, the first thing I did was the Heaven and Hell in '07 for Ronnie. And in rehearsals, it was a multi angle story. I had a rainbow, one of those yellow shirts, those bootlegs you used to get off eBay, and it was Long Live Rock and Roll. And so I turned the corner coming out of catering, and this is in Vancouver again in rehearsals. And Ronnie looks at me and does a step back, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, Robert finally allowed me to come work for you. And he's like, "That's awesome," And I said, "I told you in Oakland in '92 that was Ronnie's last show that we all thought forever was with Sabbath because he sort of got screwed if you know, but he I told him afterwards we had guest passes and I told him I said it's sad because this is my favorite lineup of my favorite band and it's very sad to see this come to an end. And he looked at me dead in the face. He was an inch away from me. He said, "Yeah, it's my favorite lineup of my favorite band." and he hugged me and he said, "I'm glad we got back together. I remember talking to you saying that." And he put his index finger on Blackmore's face on my shirt. But he said to me, "We're gonna make this work this time, but you shan't be seeing that band again because of that asshole." And he put his finger on Blackmore, which later I found out why that didn't happen. But yeah, Ronnie basically told me that the Japanese are, and I'm going to give you the condensed version. They had meetings in New York. The promoter, Mr. Udo or whatever in Japan, flew to New York to meet with Wendy and Ralph Baker, Tony's manager, and they were going to pay them an astronomical, not Ralph Baker, I'm sorry, Blackmore's mother-in-law, who is Candace Knight's mom, who is his manager by default, hers, but by proxy his. But anyway, so they're in New York, and Wendy's representing Ronnie, of course. Now this is like '04 or '05, and Wendy called Ronnie and said, "This is horrible." You know, uh, Candace Knight's mother was saying, they were going to give him $1 million up front to put Rainbow back together and go to Japan, do like 7, 8 shows. I don't remember a specific number. And they're going to pay him like $1 million up front, but then they were also going to get residual merch, DVDs, home video, all this stuff. and Wendy called Ronnie and said they're horrible. That Blackmore's mother-in-law is saying, nudging Wendy, saying, if we can get $1 million, we can get 2. If they don't go for that, we'll get $1.5 million. Basically insulting these people, because the Japanese culture doesn't involve bargaining. It's not like a used car lot in America where you offer them 500 and they'll take 3 for it, or what. It's like they come with their best offer up front, and when you start trying to pull a New York sort of quick one on them, they're insulted. And so Ronnie told Wendy, pull my name out of the hat. I'm not any part of this. Tell Mr. Udo I apologize. So that's why Rainbow never had a reunion with Ronnie. So
wow.
I heard a story about Candace Owens' mother.
Yeah,
Candace Knight. That there was some kind of signing that Blackmore was doing, that she was in line taking everybody's Deep Purple and Rainbow albums away.
Right. Yep.
You can only sign Blackmore's Night.
That's probably true. A friend of mine met him recently in the New York area, and he actually signed a few Machine Heads or something that he hadn't been doing for years. He hasn't been doing for a lot of years. So maybe he's mellowing out in his old age. I don't know.
Yeah, he wanted it back in Deep Purple, but that didn't work out.
No.
They don't want him.
No, they don't. He screwed them and left them abandoned in Japan, so I don't blame him.
And that's all caught on video.
Yeah.
They released it. I think it's called Hell or High Water.
Okay.
Yeah, it shows like Blackmore walks out and throws water on the cameraman. And then there's interviews in between songs where they're all bad mouthing Blackmore.
Yeah.
A friend of mine that used to work for the Sanctuary CMC label told me that he asked Roger Glover what the deal was with that. And Roger Glover said he threw that water at my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a trip. That video opens up with Highway Star, and you hear no guitar, and they're just playing. And all of a sudden, when it comes to the solo, he walks out, throws the water, and then he goes into the solo.
You think it's Tommy Bolin over there? Remember on the Deep Purple in Japan, you don't hear guitar because Tommy Bolin's all paralyzed from banging heroin.
Yeah, he had a dead arm. He was having to bar chord everything, and John Lord was having to do all the guitar solos on the Hammond organ.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not made in Japan. What's it called with Tommy?
Sun Rises over Japan, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, the last shows in Japan, or whatever they call it.
It was actually released on the DVD called Phoenix Rising.
Yeah, they did put it in. Yeah.
That story is so whacked, man. God, it's a crazy story about the dude that gets pushed down the elevator shaft and all that shit.
Yeah. In Jakarta, Indonesia. Yeah. The roadie got shoved down an elevator. They claimed it was an accident, but John Lord said he never believed that. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts.
They were going to be extorted because they got taken to jail for suspicion of murder, but then told if they hand over all the money they made for playing the stadium, they'd let them go. So it felt like a setup to them.
Yeah, but if you guys out there have never seen the Phoenix Rising documentary on Deep Purple, watch it. It's probably on YouTube. It might even be on like Tubi or something. You can probably watch it. It was one of those Eagle Vision documentaries, which are very well done. So I had told Richard, I had told Ralph the story about what you with the Mike Borden story. You got to share that with us, because so you guys remember in the early 2000s, Sharon Osbourne got pissed off and was getting sued by Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake over the unpaid performance royalties for Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. So she had Mike Borden and Robert Trujillo, who were the rhythm section in Ozzy at that time. She went in the studio and had them re-record the bass and drum tracks on Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, and she released them as some like new remix record. And it was just blasphemy to all us fans. The true fans were like, that's pissing all over the Mona Lisa or something. I mean,
You know what's really messed up is that they didn't announce on the CD that it was,
and then they got sued over that. Some fans sued them over that, trying to pass it off as the real deal.
Yeah.
rightfully so. My guitar player bought Diary of a Madman on CD. It didn't. It just. I saw it. I went to his house. It didn't say anything that it was different members, but you can clearly hear the
They
difference.
just messed it off as a remaster. Nobody, people didn't know. And then I read up a little about this, getting my dates in line for this, and apparently the first ones did not come with a warning, but they were ordered to put a sticker on it. So apparently some of the second presses of that were made to put a sticker on it, which I never saw one of those. But I do.
The sticker says something about re-recorded bass and drum tracks.
Okay, I do recognize them because they put, of course, those crop pictures that love to pretend like it was just Ozzy and Randy. That they just put a picture of those two together every time, and just crop out Bob and Lee or Tommy and Rudy or whoever was involved in. But yeah, I done a little reading today, and that was 2002 lawsuit. Those reissues came out in late 2002, and well, the federal judge ended up dismissing Lee and Bob's lawsuit in August of 2002. So it happened pretty quick. So I knew about it in 2003 when I was on Metallica. There's my laminate for that. And I was on Metallica tour, and I saw Robert Trujillo a lot, but I was able to never say anything. I never confronted him. I never just told him how much I disliked him as a bass player, which I always have disliked him as a bass player, just due to the fact that he ruined Suicidal Tendencies. He then ruined Metallica, and he's nowhere near fit to play Jason Newsted or Cliff Burton's. But I love Suicidal up until How Will I Laugh, and then they got that guy in there with his monkey walk, and it's like I didn't care for it. I don't like the guy, but I stayed away from him, did my job, and but Mike Borden wasn't so lucky later, a couple of years later. So, but
you were on Ozfest when that happened.
I was, and
so tell me that story again.
Well, it's hard to put it's hard to put an emphasis on how important those albums were to me, because Blizzard came out, and then late 81 Diary came out, and I was like I don't know, I was sort of into football, but not really. I was sort of into, different things, music, not really. I'd grown out of Kiss, so I don't know, I was sort of drifting, and sort of early pubescent, misery, teenage lament, and then I was at a party, and this guy had Blizzard and Diary. And when I heard those records, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to go drink a beer. I'm underage, or I'm going to go meet a girl, see some tits or whatever. And no, when I heard those records, it was like, that's all I cared about. The rest of the night, I sat there flipping the records and just in awe of the album covers and just mesmerized. So those records, without being cliche, You Changed My Life and all that, they really did alter my direction in life. Had I not heard Blizzard and Diary, I probably may not have ever been in a band or worked in music or any of that, because it was just intense. And my heroes were always Bill Ward and Lee Kerslake and Simon Kirke and Jerry Shirley and Phil Rudd, Corky Lang, meat and potatoes guys that, and John Bonham, of course. But it's like those albums just blew me away. And so it was intense, and I loved the records. And then Gary Moore came out with an album called Run for Cover in 85, and late 85, 86. I had grown up thinking that the inside sleeve of Diary is Rudy and Tommy. That's who played on it. That's what the record says, bass and drums, Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge. That's literally what credits read. And So I was into the Gary Moore album. I was going back through Thin Lizzy, and I wasn't even 20 yet, and read this interview with Gary Moore, and he says that he auditioned for Ozzy, or Ozzy wanted him to, and he said no, and he said he wouldn't waste his time with Ozzy Osbourne, and he said he wanted everyone to know that Bob Daisley spit every word out. Bob Daisley wrote every word that Ozzy ever spat out of his fat mouth. And Bob and Lee also play on both records and don't get credit for it. And I was blown away. That's when I found out that it makes sense. It's the same band did both records. And so, you know, it was a big important thing to me. So fast forward to 2005 when I'm then working for Ozzy, and I decided to take a load in. After a load in, I decided to take a bike ride. And at Mountain View in San Francisco, the buses are parked sort of up the hill and across the way in a gravel parking lot. So I do a good little bike ride, and come back around to I see the Black Label camp. They got a bus and a tent, and I see Tim Boland, the tour manager, Nick Catanese, a rhythm guitarist, and Zach, and Mike Borden. He was hanging with them, and he was in a lawn chair. So I don't know, something snapped in me. I can be a sarcastic asshole, and I decided to let it rip. And I rode my bike right up to basically I stopped, hit the brakes at Mike's knees, and I said, "Hey, Mike Borden, how's it going?" And he's like, "Hey." He asked some question like, "Do I know you?" And he saw my laminate, and I said, "No, you don't." I said, "You record over any classic rock records lately?" um, he's like, "What?" He's like agitated. What are you talking about? I said, "No, I want to know if you recorded over drums on any classic fucking music. I'm hoping you'll redo the Beatles' White Album. I'm hoping you'll take the drums off of Dark Side of the Moon, man. It could really use your special finesse." And he's like, well, "Man, that's not cool what you're saying." He's like, "You don't know what you're talking about." I said, "I do know what I'm talking about." He said, "Those albums you mentioned are classics. Nobody would touch those." And I said, "Well, you know what? Blizzard and Diary are classics to some of us." And he he started justifying. He's like, "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how difficult it was to duplicate those drums." Lee Kerslake was high on cocaine. His meter was all over the map. It was impossible. It was damn near impossible for me to do that. And I was like, "Here's a thought. Maybe you shouldn't have done it." And he said to me, "Well, somebody was going to do it. It was going to happen with or without me." And I said, "So if somebody tells you they're going to kill their wife, you're going to do it because they're going to do it without you? Kill their newborn baby?" I said, you know, it's bullshit. And he's like, "You just don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "Yeah, I bet I don't, you know." But I said, "Those albums, man." And Zach, the funny thing about this is Zach Wild was 3 feet away, staring at me. He's just like glaring at me intently. He never said a word. He he just kept looking at me like, and I really expected him to come and punch me or something because you know that's the way Zach was in 2004 and five. But he never did. But I also had had a lot of talks with Zach about Randy, and I know he loved Randy. He worshipped him, and he never said a word. Neither did anyone else. And you know, Mike made a bunch of excuses, and it was going to happen anyway. And once Sharon decides to do it, you're not going to fight it. It was so difficult. And he said I didn't know what I was talking about, and I said actually I do. The lawsuit for Lee and Bob's performance royalties is what they were suing for, and it pissed her off. I said, "I do know what I'm talking about because they're missing about $250,000 a year each." And I said, "They get you to do it. You do it for a one-time fee, whatever that is, five, three, $2,000. You redo it. That version becomes the law, and then you fuck Lee and Bob out of money, and you make chunk. You're basically scab labor is what we call it in the union world, and he looked like he was going to tear up. He got really pissed off, but he didn't want to say anything to. He saw my laminate, and so he jumps up out of his chair and he walks over to me, staring at my laminate. He said, "What's your name? What do you do? What's your job?" And I flipped my laminate around. Let's see, like it was like this. This is an Ozfest '04 with a hologram sticker for escort privileges. It's got my name on the back. And I flipped it around. I said, "My name's Richard Johnson. I'm a nobody. I'm just nobody. So I'm just a fan of Blizzard and Diary that you fucking really pissed off." He took a step back, and he looked at me and he looked at my laminate and looked back up in my face, and he stuck his hand out and shake my hand. He said, "I want to give you one thing. Everybody talks shit on the internet and blabbermouth and sends me emails. You are the only human being on earth that's ever had the balls to walk up to me and say something in person." And I looked at him and said, "I'm glad I could help you." And I wrote off, and I did not shake his hand. So that's how that went.
That's an awesome story. I'm telling you, man. That shit's hero quality, man. You know?
And what did that lead to, Richard?
All right. So years later, and
well, you left the tour like not long after that, right?
I got dismissed 2 days later.
Because of that? Because of that?
Nobody ever told me if it was related to that, but I'm sure he's such a whiny baby, San Francisco, pussy that I'm sure he did tell Sharon. But and it was all new at that time. And like, okay, this was '05. So all that had just occurred in 2002. So it was only 3 years earlier. So all the fallout from that was still happening. She thought she was going to put these different versions out and get away with it, and she didn't. I mean, and like true operating procedure for them, they 30th anniversary, they restored the original bass and drums back, and then they used that as a marketing scheme. Oh, 30th anniversary with restored bass and drum tracks. So you're using it as a promotional tool to restore something that you never should have screwed with. Just like Lee Kerslake, if you have ever seen the Not on the Heat, but Lee Kerslake documentary, the Osbournes mail him his gold records for Blizzard and Diary after all these years of him basically begging for them. One of the most important things he ever said he wanted in his life: just give me my gold records. You're not going to pay me. You're not going to put my name on Diary. You're not going to just give me my gold records that I earned because I played on the records. Well, they didn't. They ignored them. They ignored Bob and Lee all those years. And then literally 2 months before Lee Kerslake dies, they ship them to England. And then they use that like, look how cool we are and how generous we are. They turn it around to benefit themselves. Even when they're doing something they should have done to begin with, they turn it around to make themselves look so generous, and that's just the way they are. And people fall for it. Oh, they're so cool. Ozzy and Sharon, Ozzy's so cool. He made sure Lee got his gold records. Yeah. And what? 2020, when Lee Kerslake should have had those records since 1981. But that's the modus operandi for the Osbournes. That's how it plays out.
Richard, on this channel, my channel, I do news segments.
Okay.
And I have done news segments how Sharon has fucked over.
Yeah. I've seen some of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and the comments, there are comments going, "Screw you, Sharon's a great human being." And I even made it, and a lot of people, I'll even be guilty to say I thought this myself. When people say, and I've said it myself, if it wasn't for Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy be dead. She said,
right, that's the go-to.
But if you really think about it, did Ozzy slow down? he was like with the Motley Crue tour,
Right.
him almost killing her with vodka. He was still as messed up, if not even more messed up than when she saved his life. You know what I'm saying? But what you brought up earlier is what, yeah, a lot of people out there do not know that Sharon Osbourne is a mean. You know that she kicked Phil Suzanne in the knee right in front of Randy Castillo's casket. Open casket. She kicked him in the knee right in front of his casket.
Yeah. That's funny you bring that up. I was talking to another guy, friend of ours from North Carolina today about that. Okay, on the Metal Masters tour, I met Randy's Castillo's sister in Albuquerque. And I don't know what, we were in Ronnie's dressing room. They were drinking Boddington's Pub Ale and smoking hash. They love hashish. And it was Randy's sister, Lorenzo, the monitor guy, Ronnie. And Ronnie was really buzzed. And two things I remember about that night was Ronnie, there's a Black Sabbath 12-inch from Dehumanizer, TV Crimes, and it has Letters from Earth that's an alternate version with alternate lyrics.
Yeah.
And I had that signed by Tony, Geezer, and Vinny, and I brought it in the dressing room for Ronnie to sign, and he signed it. He started joking about me. There's a guy that ran a Dio website, still does, I guess, Tapio. He's over in some country, and it's Dio.net, and the guy's got massive Dio archives, and he's a massive Dio fanatic. And Ronnie laughs. He said, "Yeah, you only need me on it." And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Now you got everything. You got almost as much as Tapio." And we all laughed. And I said, "No, I'm no Tapio." I said, "I got a lot of Black Sabbath stuff with you, but I don't have, I don't, He said, he tells me about Steve, his assistant. By that point, they're in like Germany, and Steve's taking a Dio advertisement off a telephone pole, and Ronnie says, "Why are you doing that?" He said, "Oh, it's not for me, it's for Tapio." And so I said, I'm no Tapio, but I did have a massive Sabbath collection with Ronnie, but I still got my records, but yeah. So, and then the other thing was Randy Castillo's sister was there, and I said to her, "Was that true about Sharon kicking Phil at the funeral?" And she said, "Yeah, absolutely true."
Wow.
And she said, "But I'm not going to talk shit about him. I'm not going to go public with that. I'll never admit it in public." She said, "But the truth is, I can't say anything bad about them because they paid for Randy's body to be transported back to Albuquerque, and they paid all charges related to the funeral." So she wasn't going to badmouth him, but she did tell me that really happened. And you know,
One of the
I mean,
things, one of the things you just mentioned about the Letters from Earth thing, I remember you telling me the story once about, I don't know if that was the time or you met you met Ronnie James Dio years before, and you were telling them that there's this alternate version of Letters from Earth, and he
it was
said,
that
"No,
time,
there's
yeah.
not." Yeah, he said, "No, there's not."
Yeah. No, it was then. And I was in his
Okay.
dressing room, and I was like, "Yeah, this is the one where you got the different lyrics, and it's less compressed. It's like a wide open drum sound, and it's really awesome." And he's like, "No, that's the version on the record. There's no different version of Letters from Earth." But the funny thing is, the track listing says Letters from Earth alternate version. I mean, it's obviously a different version, but Ronnie, he kept
You're
on.
not gonna argue with Ronnie over that.
Nope.
So,
Especially a half drunk, buzzed on hash, Ronnie. Because I was like, "No, not gonna go there." I just said, "Yes, sir," whatever. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But that was intense.
That happened once with me when I met Exodus, Steve Souza. I had a single for Lunatic Parade that the B-side was an awesome song from Blackfoot called Good Morning.
Yep.
And I had him sign. He goes, "What the hell is this?" And he goes, and he was like, "Good morning. Yeah, we recorded, but I didn't know we released this." He had no idea, no clue.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess that happens,
Another story out. Richard and I went to see. We went to see Black Country Communion. I think it was right when the second album, I think it dropped, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we went to the 930. We went to the 930 Club and saw them. And Richard's like, I'm gonna get us back to meet Glenn. And I'm like, how you gonna do that? And Richard knows how to look for people. He's watching people. He's like,
Yeah.
that's the tour. He's like, that's the tour manager. I'm like, how do you know? He goes, yeah, that's the tour manager. See where he's coming from and how he's doing stuff. And he goes up and so Glenn Hughes used to live in Atlanta in the 80s. So Richard and he used to hang out at what was this place, Charlie McGruger's. And
Yeah.
Richard said to the tour manager, he says, hey, could you tell Glenn that Richard from Charlie McGruger's is here? And he walked right in, and Kimmy says, hey, he wants to see you, and brought us right up to meet him. He said the magic words. And Richard had this old photo of me when the first time he met Glenn Hughes outside a Judas Priest concert in Atlanta. Like it was at the Omni.
Hey, bro. Or Ram It Down
And,
tour. Yeah.
Yeah, Ram It Down tour. And Glenn Hughes had like puke all down his shirt, and he looked completely drunk. And he had that crazy hairdo. And Glenn just tripped on it. He's like, yep, that was me. You know? And yeah, what was the story behind that, man? He's just like,
we're waiting to meet Priest, and we knew Glenn was there because we'd go to a show and see him in the audience all the time. I mean, he lived there. He's Charlie McGruger.
This is like 87, 86.
86, 87, 86, 87. And we'd always see the guy, and I can't remember what shows. Judas Priest. Obviously, he was friends with Dave Holland because they were in Trapeze together, and so he was really still good friends with Dave Holland. And that night you're talking about, I'm pretty sure it's the Ram It Down, Ram It Down tour, and he was on the bus that Dave Holland was on, and we watched him throw him off of that. We were out there, and he just came tumbling off, and he almost hit the ground. It's like a scene out of a movie. He's trying to zip his pants up. He had pissed himself either before he got on the bus or on the bus. I'm not sure, but he definitely pissed his pants. His whole pants leg was wet with piss. His eyes were rolling back in his head like he was about to pass out, like have a seizure. His eyes kept rolling back into his head, and he came out and walked over to us. It's probably like 5 of us. And we had met people. I mean, we'd met Downing and Tipton and Holland and Halford, and we'd met them, but we just hanging out. That's what we did. We were teenagers, and by then I was 20, but we just kept hanging. We'd always hang out, and he walked over after he got thrown out of the bus, and he took his watch off, and he lived in the north part of Atlanta called Marietta. And he took his watch off, and he's like, I'll give any of you fuckers this Rolex if you take me to Marietta. Let me get some cocaine right now. And he's dangling the watch like right now. You who wants this fucking Rolex? Take me to Marietta, Georgia. Let me get some cocaine. And we all looked at each other. We're like, whatever car he gets in, he's gonna die in it. So we were like, fuck, no, we're not doing that. But one of us, a guy, loose end nut, he said, I'll take you, Glenn. And he took Glenn, and Glenn gave him the watch, and he took Glenn to get below and dropped him off at some club, some 24-hour club. And before Glenn got out of the car, this guy's name was Robert. He said, Glenn, here, and he gave him the watch back. And he said, I'm not going to take your watch. And shortly after that I guess is when Glenn hit rock bottom. I never saw him again, but I never saw him in Atlanta again. I've seen him a bunch, but yeah.
Thank goodness he did hit rock bottom, because he came back strong as hell,
Yeah, and that night, he was always at shows. It was Van Halen and AC/DC. He was just always at shows, sitting in the audience. And what's funny is sometimes I had better seats than Glenn. I remember one show, I think it was AC/DC or Judas Priest. I had like 3rd row, and I walked by, and Glenn was like on 20th row. But it was obvious when he was there because he looked like he did on 7th Star. He had the mullet, and he had the black tie and the black jacket, and he'd always have a sticky on it, and with the beard. And he always had a certain look. You could spot him a mile away back then. But yeah, that was. And so he actually did the theme song. I don't know if that's on YouTube, but there was a theme song for that bar on their advertisement here on 96 Rock, and Glenn did that.
For
I don't
the
know if it's on
Magruder.
YouTube. Or what. Yeah, Charlie Magruder's. Yep. But yeah, well, he remember Tony when we went to his dressing room at the 930 Club. He's like, oh man, those are bad days, and can't believe we're all still here. And because that guy, I heard he did that commercial for Bar Tab up there. So I heard I didn't think he got paid for it. That's how hard up he was. So
Yeah, he took that photo that you had, and he says,
yeah,
"I'm going to put this in the next pressing of my book," which
yeah,
he didn't.
yeah.
I don't think it's ever been repressed,
No,
but I mean that photo is just like, good Lord, man, God, that dude looked bad in that photo. Yeah, it was
I mean,
crazy.
I've never stood next to a person and just assumed they'd be dead in 5 minutes. And that's how bad he was. He couldn't talk. He was drooling. His eyes were convulsing back into his head. I mean, it's
But you took a
cocaine.
picture with, but you took a photo with.
Well,
You're like, we're gonna get, it might be the last photo ever.
yeah,
But it's great. It's crazy. Yeah.
I,
We
I was, like I said, I was 20. So,
yeah.
it was all, nothing would have surprised me at a metal concert when I was 20 years old. Fights, people pissing in the sink at the arena, people fighting, hitting cops, girls pulling their shirts off. I mean, whatever. You've seen it all, in the 80s.
Yeah. Especially in
Yeah.
somewhere like Atlanta, it was pretty wild.
But
Yeah.
so back to our friend Mike Borden, who I also dislike immensely, way before he was ever a drummer in Ozzy. But he was never really good at playing Bob or Tommy or anybody's parts, and I just never liked the guy. And then I went out and did the end tour. I did one leg of the end tour, and I did the leg that started in Omaha and then ended in New York. And we did San Jose in February 16, and he was there in catering. And I walk in, and he kept staring at me, and I got my dinner and sat down, and he just kept staring and kept staring and kept staring, but he never said a word to me. But I'm pretty sure he recognized me as the guy that confronted him. But yeah.
I
You
saw
got to
I saw him once with Black Sabbath, and it was terrible.
Yeah, well, he did the 97 tour too that Bill Ward was supposed to do, the Ozfest. And that is another reason I dislike that guy because, I mean, Bill Ward, it was a reunion, and then, of course, you see the spin on it. It's Geezer, Tony, and Ozzy on the Ozfest 97 posters. But, I mean, the guy shouldn't have been there. He's not fit to carry Bill Ward sticks. So,
you
that's
got to
just,
be you got to know Bill Ward pretty well too. I
yeah,
know
definitely. I knew Bill
when I
way
first
back.
when I first met you, and I think Bill was doing an AA meeting that day in
Yeah.
catering.
You asked me what time will Bill Ward be here, and I thought it was weird because nobody ever asked about Bill. They always ask you about Ozzy or Tony. And you said, "Hey, what time's Bill Ward going to be here?" And I told you 2 o'clock for the AA meeting. And and I don't know, Tony. I mean, I was a driver, but I ended up being Bill's assistant on that tour, on the '04 tour, because Walter, his assistant, proper assistant, left. He tour managed Susie and the Banshees, and he had to leave. So I was actually Bill's assistant for the last few weeks of that, which was waking Bill up, getting him to the meeting, getting him, sound checks. So that was Bill Ward is the only person I've ever worked as their assistant for. I've never done that before or since. So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
favorite, my
Good picture
favorite,
of Bill in oh 05. Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
favorite drummer, hands down.
Yeah. One of mine, I mean, probably my most influential just because he was so heavy, but yet he didn't play heavy metal. He was
Uh, he
blues and
was
swinging and
he was a
He
true
swing.
original, man. The way he played drums,
yeah,
very original.
yeah, definitely. And he's a nice person too. He's a nice human being. And that 97 Ozfest fell apart because I found out later that they wanted to pay Bill less, of course. It's always with the money with her. They were offering him less money, which he wasn't going to take. And he also was a hardcore vegan, and part of his contractual, you know, thing was he didn't want to play anywhere that sold meat. He didn't want to wear. He didn't want to be anywhere where people were going to wear leather. And he just had some weird stuff in his contract. And I think he finally hooked up with some people that told him, let that stuff go, because you're not going to change it at a metal concert. Somebody's going to be wearing leather. You're not going to change it at a 20,000 seat venue in America. They're going to sell hot dogs. Let it go. And from what I was told, he did let it go, but he wasn't going to play for less money. And so that's why Mike Gordon was there for that 97. So.
Which tour was it that Vinny Appice toured with them? And in case Bill, was that 99?
90 Ozfest 90. Well, I saw a reunion a few times, and Vinny.
Yeah,
Vinny
not.
But he didn't play. He was there because Bill had had a heart attack, and Sharon demanded he have a backup drummer, which came out of Bill's salary, by the way. And
wow.
and then they went to Europe in I think 98 Ozfest, and Vinny played those shows, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, what's funny is Bill, even post heart attack, was in better shape than most people, man. He could have played circles around people, but now he's admitted he can't do it anymore. But the ship sailed, and it's unfortunate they fucked him over. But
well, the whole thing that Ozzy talking about wanting to do one more show with the original four, they just can't pull it. He can't pull it off. I mean, anybody that saw him recently at that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, I mean, he's in rough shape, man.
I think Bill Ward's got a better chance of doing a full show than Ozzy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll take Bill's odds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the way the shows were. Even when I was out with him,
I'll be right back.
I didn't get a set list, but it was like, Paranoid, Iron Man, Children of the Grave, and Symptom of the Universe riff, not the song, Sweet Leaf. It was a real short set, and even Ozzy missed shows when I was out with him. So yeah, I mean, if you can't stand up for your own induction into the Hall of Fame, you're probably not going to do any more concerts. That's the way I look at it.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, but I know you've I know you've toured with a lot of bands that weren't metal and stuff, but you've toured, you've driven for Priest now. I know you were out with Priest.
Yeah, Priest. Well, Ozfest 04. I was driving for Sabbath, but Priest were on it. I did Metal Masters. I did Angel of Retribution, which was Priest and Queen Drive.
That's
then
the one that. Yeah, you got me tickets because they came to. I can't remember where we went and saw the Angel of Retribution tour. Yeah, that's the picture. Richard's got a picture of him. He's picked KK down, and there's a photo of him holding KK down, and so you went to see KK's Priest recently, and you reminded him of that. Yeah.
Hell, he loved it. He asked me what he was drinking that night, and I was like, he said, "Was it vodka?" I said, "No, it was Jägermeister with Kerry King. That's what you were drinking." But yeah. Yeah, wow. that was fun.
Yeah. So he was hanging out with KK. So it was KK and KK.
Yeah, it was.
Kerry King.
and KK and Kerry King went to. He got his Priest albums out of the back lounge and had KK sign them, and it was pretty cool seeing Kerry King, act like a true fan. Which obviously Slayer were huge Priest fans.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. What was it you were telling what was it you told KK and tripped him out about the book?
Man, you're gonna embarrass me. No, I got him to sign his book, and
KK's autobiography that came out.
And his tour manager was sitting there, with him, like, we gotta go, whatever. This is like just recently, and it was cold. It was cold in Atlanta in March last year. And then I said, I got to get you signed your book before you leave. And I opened the book and I said, thanks for writing it. I've enjoyed it. I've gone through it like 3 times. He said, yeah, man. I said, I got through yours 3 times. I couldn't get through Rob's even once. I said, "Thank you for not putting a chapter about sucking dick in a truck stop glory hole." And Rob and fucking this manager looked at me and his jaw just dropped. He couldn't believe I said that. And KK looked at me and said, "Not me, mate." And I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, I'm sure he tripped on that and laughed about it when he.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's true, man. I was all into Halford's book, and then it's just I never got any further with that book. That was it. The glory hole and the
Yeah, I was
truck.
like, I never read. You were telling me about it. I'm like, why do you need to put that in there? I mean, it's not like KK Down in his book. He just like, yeah, I talked about all the chicks that he shagged on tour, or anything. It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
He concentrated about the girl he felt like I mean, he did say there were girls, but he didn't give you
Yeah.
graphic detail. But then he just went, the one he concentrated on was one he fell in love with and actually pondered marrying. And she got killed in a car wreck. And that's the only one that she was a model that got killed in California. And that's really the only girl that KK elaborates on. So, which is in his book. And I mean, people should read a little bit because people like, especially on priest websites, they love to insult KK. He quit. Fuck him. He quit. Priests are better now, and just whatever. I've read all that nonsense, and it's like, I mean, when you read his book and you realize that Glenn was controlling priests by proxy by, having a relationship with the manager, and he was steering priest. I mean, and that was the turning point for KK. That he found out Iron Maiden were playing Rock in Rio, and that Priest was offered it, and it bothered him. Why didn't Judas Priest go do this massive once in a lifetime gig? And the manager told him that because Glenn wants to be home for Christmas, he doesn't want to go anywhere. He doesn't want to travel, and so that's when he started putting it together. Glenn and Jane are steering Judas Priest, but yet KK has no wife, no girlfriend, no children. He's never done anything outside Judas Priest, never had his own website selling merchandise, never had another band, never had a solo record, never had any life outside of Judas Priest. Yet now he's in a band where he's second fiddle in a band he joined first. And now he's being told what he's going to do and not do. So, yeah, I mean, I imagine it was a bitter pill to swallow. So, people
Yeah.
should
And they did a
try.
farewell tour. He thought that was it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
I'm glad he left because I like KK's Priest, obviously, and I'm happy with it.
It's
I
not
mean,
Judas Priest. I always say it, man. You don't have now Judas Priest. It's like the Rob Hopper Soul Band featuring Ian Hill,
it
because
is
man, not to have not only Glenn but KK, both of them, not there
exactly.
anymore. That's not Judas Priest, man.
No, it
Well,
is
I'm
all
happy to get good music from both because both those KK's Priest albums are kick ass. And man, Invincible Shield's a great record, man. I
yeah,
love it, man. So
but I
but
mean,
I mean, so is Halford's solo records. They're great,
yeah,
So
yeah,
it could be about the same situation there,
yeah. As far as great concert moments, as far as like seeing bands that just blew me away, I actually doing Ozfest 2010. I think we did 7 shows, and the lineup sucked. So fucking weak. It was Motley Crue, and of course that's what it is. But it's like Ozzy that had Blasco and Gus G, whose Gus is good, and it had that drummer Tommy in it. But it was okay, but it wasn't nothing to write home about. And you had opening the show was Halford, and it was just like Halford just blew me away, man. I was down there front and center watching the Halford band every day for all 7 shows, and I feel looking back, I feel really fortunate I got to see that band because they just didn't tour America very often. So
Mhm. I saw him a couple of times when Resurrection was out, and I saw him, with Maiden, and then of course they came back did a headlining tour, and I saw that. But yeah, I mean that was such a good band. That Metal Mike guy on guitar and Bobby Jarzombek on drums. God, he's amazing drummer, And
he is a nice guy too. And by the time I saw him in 2010, Patrick was gone, but they had Roy Z out there playing guitar, who produced the records and stuff. And he's cool too. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I had meet and greet passes for Maiden on that tour in 2000, the Brave New World. And we're standing there waiting for Maiden to come out, and they come out, and everybody's, I mean, it's probably 25, 30 people back there trying to get autographs from Maiden. And I saw Bobby Drzonbek, and I just walked over and started talking to him. And he's like, "There's Iron Maiden. You don't want to meet Iron Maiden?" And I'm like, "I want to talk to you. You were in Riot." And he was just like, "Wow."
I want to talk to you. You're in George Strait.
Yeah, he's in George Strait now. He's playing, but Bobby's playing stadiums. I can't knock that. You know he's getting paid well. So
he probably is making a lot more money than playing metal. But
oh yeah, and that stuff's so simple. He could probably make a sandwich while he's playing the songs. You know.
No, definitely. No, definitely.
Yeah, but good for him, man. I'm happy for him. Glad he's doing well. But yeah, that Halford band was amazing, dude. They were so good.
Oh, yeah.
I never got to see him in Resurrection. I think it's the best thing Halford's done since Defenders and Beyond period. I just think that album is so. I like what was the second one called? Crucible.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good too, but
they're both great.
Yeah. Resurrection, man. I remember my friend worked at CMC or Sanctuary or whatever it was, and I went to his house, and he's like, "I got something to play for you," and he had this CD single, one song, just a song, Resurrection. And he put it on, and I was like, I mean, you know, I had no idea that Halford was doing anything like this, because I thought he was down, you know, he was all up Trent Reznor's ass the last time.
Me too, man.
And he put that song on, man, Resurrection, and it's like jaw dropping, you know, it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
He's done a whole album like this, so I was like, yeah, I can't wait, you know.
I remember maybe even a year before Resurrection came out, that Rob Halford released online for free to download for free a demo for the song Silent Scream.
Oh, wow.
Dude, that song, Silent Scream, that may be my favorite off of that Halford album. It's like Beyond the Realms of Death, 2000s version. It's so good. And when I heard that was in the thick of 2. When I heard that, I was like, wait a second, this sounds like the Rob Halford I want to hear.
Yeah. I was late with the internet. I didn't get on the internet till 2000. So I would have missed that.
Yeah.
But it seems like I remember somebody saying something about it, maybe reading about it in Metal Maniacs, but I didn't have a chance to hear it, you know. But yeah, that was some great stuff. It's just like I remember going to that same dude's house, man, when Accident at Birth came out from Bruce Dickinson, and what was that, 1997, and God, man, that was just like, wow. Yeah, Bruce is making records that sound more like Maiden than what Maiden's making right now.
I think Accident of Birth, Chemical Wedding, and the last one is better than any recent Maiden album.
Oh yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I agree with the Halford thing. I think Rob, I mean, even if people aren't like, oh, it's they can't latch onto that music, which I don't understand why you couldn't. But I think Rob's voice peaked, and you can go back and watch these Halford bands at Anaheim or whatever. He had such range. They could do Never Satisfied. He could do Painkiller. He could do the Halford stuff, like you're talking about Resurrection. I mean, I do think Rob Halford peaked as a singer with that band. And the third album is called Made of Metal, and it's grown on me over years. It's not great, but it's grown on me. But I mean, you know, they just announced they're doing a tour next year, Priest, of they're calling it Shield of Pain. They're going to weave in a lot of the Painkiller record on its 35th anniversary, and I was like, that's going to be impressive, because I don't know. I mean, Rob's still got a great voice, but I don't know if he can pull all that Painkiller stuff off. But
I mean,
he's an octave lower now, and he growls a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you got Hell Patrol, and I mean, so many songs. It's got so many like high vocal
Yeah.
parts in those songs. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
So
I will see. I probably will go see that. But
of course they've been doing Hell Patrol on the last couple of tours
yeah.
and stuff. I think they were doing it and stuff. Yeah.
Did you
But
you
yeah,
see them do it?
he's got a good sound man. I don't think Rob's using any backing tracks or anything,
No.
but you have a good sound man that knows when to hit that delay button at the right time and
Yeah.
enhance your vocals. And hey, that's cool. I got no issues with that.
Rob always had delay though, even in the 80s.
Vince Neil needs a guy like that that just fucking hits the mute button the whole time.
No, yeah, Vince Neil needs to retire. But
Somebody told me that Vince Neil was singing the tapes. I was like, couldn't they find better tapes?
exactly.
That can't be possible because they're horrible. I mean, God, it just that whole thing about the crew singing the back and I mean maybe the band's playing the back and tapes, but Vince they didn't use them. They didn't use anything good.
That shit sounds live to me.
Yeah, it's bad, terribly bad. Yeah, but yeah,
So you
I mean,
Priest do Hell Patrol, Tony?
yeah, they were doing Hell Patrol in one of the last few tours,
Saw
I think.
KK's Priest do Hell Patrol, right? Didn't you see KK's Priest do Hell Patrol?
Maybe it was KK's Priest that I saw do Hell Patrol. Maybe that's when I've got it mixed up.
The last time I saw Judas Priest, they played Hell Patrol and All Guns Blazing.
Okay.
KK's Priest did Nightcrawler, and I thought they did that one too.
Yeah, I saw the first KK Priest American show in Fort Lauderdale, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I saw it like 3 years later and with LA Guns, and I'm telling you, I just went about 4 weeks ago and saw it with Accept in Nashville, and they added that song Before the Dawn, and I loved the first one I saw, but hell, to see Accept and all these young kids like pumping their fists in the air to Princess of the Dawn and Boss of the Wall, and it was really cool seeing those bands together. So
yeah,
LA Guns are great at what they do, but no Accept.
I said the other night when I went to see King Diamond and the place is packed, I was talking to some people that were at the show that I knew we saw King Diamond during probably about 1997 in a club for 150 people, and this place is packed.
Yeah.
I don't know how many the Fillmore holds in Silver Springs, but it's 1,500 maybe or so, maybe more. And this younger generation, man, they've latched onto this stuff, and it's just they're loving it, man. Because we lived through that era of the 90s and early 2000s when metal just wasn't popular, especially the classic stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And you go to these shows and see these bands playing in front of like nobody. They're playing in front of 75 to 100 people. Yeah. And now, of course, those bands are getting paid. They had most of the original members, and they were getting paid $3,000 a night maybe. Now they're getting 20 grand, and they've got 2 original members left because they're legacy acts. But hey, whatever. I'm just glad that people are going out to shows again, and supporting it. It's cool.
Yeah, I hope Priest keeps it going. Another couple of 3 years. I mean, I don't know mathematically how long it can keep going, but I mean, I'm happy to have both bands out there. I like Invincible Shield a lot, but it just pisses me off when people try to pit one against the other and then vilify.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, man. And all you can do is like what I tell people, when they, you meet these old fuckers that, Sabbath's no good without Ozzy. There's only one singer of Sabbath. It's like, if he hadn't left, you wouldn't have got Blizzard and Diary, and you wouldn't have got Heaven and Hell and My Rules, which, it's more important to me.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. When a band busts up, especially back in the day, back in the 80s and stuff, man, you got other killer projects out of it. It happened all the time.
Exactly.
For sure.
Right on. Well, I want to thank everybody because we haven't been going in the chat here, but I got the chat open. I want to thank you all, Mark. Guilty of being right. Matthew,
Count Ralph is in the house.
Oh fuck, Count Ralph is. Should have had him on tonight with us.
Yep.
Richard, thank you so much for your time, man.
Oh, yeah, anytime, man.
This was really a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you back because I'm sure you have more stories to tell us.
I do. And I want to do a show with you about the greatest singer in American history, Sammy Hagar.
Oh,
Well, see, Ralph,
Richard,
Ralph was
Richard.
really listening to your Mike Borden story there, because he's going, if I ever meet Hagar, I'm just going to go up to him and say, have you shit on any like great rock bands lately, like you did Van Halen?
Oh my God, what would I pay to be the guy on a bike like Richard and go up to Sammy Hagar sitting down and just let him have it?
You know what? I know you don't like Hagar with Van Halen or whatever. But my story is really tragic and sad. I only seen Van Halen one time, and Gary Sharon was the singer.
Ooh. Well, you
So
know
I
what?
was to see Sammy Hagar.
Well, at least he did a lot of Ralph songs.
Gary Sharon did Ross songs. Sammy didn't.
Yeah,
So
that was
I
a
think
great
he saw
show.
the better show, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he got a better deal.
He tried to do Ross songs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's have a Sammy Hagar special with Richard.
No, I'm just kidding. I do like Montrose.
I love that. I love that album. I just don't like.
I do like Montrose.
I've said before, I'm a fan of Sammy. I like a lot of Sammy stuff. But you know what? We had some music on rotation at the shop today, and Chickenfoot came on.
Oh man!
And I was like, God, man, the music's cool, but the lyrics on this are horrible. It's I can't. It's like he was just making stuff up off the top of his head when they were in the studio or something, and it's just like, God, this is horrible.
Yeah, it's something. But you know what's weird about it? If you read Ted Templeman's book, he had the thought of putting Sammy, because he was friends with Montrose and Hagar from the Bay Area, so he had the thought of getting Hagar to take David Lee Roth's place before the first album even came out.
Yeah.
Then later in '84 or '83, whatever, when they started talking about replacing Roth, Eddie did. Ted Templeman said, absolutely not. There's only one singer, Van Halen. It's got to be Roth. And he was adamantly against it, even though in '78 he was for it. It was his idea, but in '83 he was like, absolutely not. It's got to be Roth. That's a good book too, Ted Templeman.
He also said if he would have hired Hagar back then, he would have made the biggest mistake in rock history.
Yep.
He said Van Halen happened because of David Lee Roth.
Right.
That's how they became big. Everybody, Eddie this, Eddie that. No, but it was Dave behind the scenes, because Dave ran Van Halen, and then Sammy ran Van Halen.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely a 1-2 punch, because in the early days, nothing topped the original Van Halen first 2-3 albums.
Yeah, so, greatest live band I ever saw in my life.
Yeah, I wished I had not seen them with Gary Sharon.
Yeah. Wow. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Love to have you back, Richard.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This was a blast, and thank you, Tony, for bringing them.
Yeah.
And
we've been talking about it for a while, so I said, yeah, we got to make it happen. Why he's not. Richard works on movie. He drives the truck for movie TV production sets now, and he's actually got some time off. So I was like, we got to do it this week before he goes back out.
It's a good week. Yeah. I don't want to do a show about movies though, but yeah.
We'll definitely have you on when you're on your next break.
Yeah. So other than Van Halen and Black Sabbath, what of course, Sabbath could be a never-ending topic, really. But
yeah.
Oh man.
Well, I can go on and on about Sabbath.
I know.
Yeah.
Favorite band. But all right.
You like Exodus, huh?
Huh?
You love Exodus too, huh?
Not really. I'm a big fan of Bonded by Blood and a couple songs here and there.
Well, that was the first ones, but I went to Oakland to see the last Sabbath concert with Ronnie in 1992, and Exodus was one of the openers, and that was cool. See them in the Bay Area or whatever. But Skew Siskin was there, and they sort of sucked, but yeah.
That was Lemmy's favorite band.
Yeah, it was. He loved helping girl bands, but that Oakland November 13th, 92, that was one of the best that was the best Sabbath show that I ever seen because Ronnie just killed it, man. He knew that was his last one. He went out with a bang. So yeah.
Yeah, killer.
Amazing. And I've said it too, because I met Ronnie twice. I've never met a musician where I actually felt really good walking away from.
Exactly.
He gave me such a personable feeling. Now, unfortunately, I saw Ronnie on Strange Highways and Magica, so that's quite a few years for him to remember me. He did
Right.
the second time, but I didn't say anything. Hey, remember me? But he was so grateful because the Strange Highways tour was in a club, a
Yeah.
small club, and
Yep.
after the show, just like Magica too, which was a bigger venue, he came out and he would not leave till every single person got something signed.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was him. That was him.
That was
man.
him. Totally.
And
Totally.
he was the only guy that I ever met, man. You walk away from going, wow, he was so cool,
Yeah,
God.
he would
Yeah,
look in your face, ask you your name. He would try to connect with you, and even if it was only for 5 minutes, he would always make a connection with people. And yeah, I never met another rock star that doesn't, grab your left hand with both of his hands and look into your eyes and wish you well and give you, positive vibes. And I mean, I never seen anybody. I used to, when I toured with him, I would just go back to the back gate and I was done working. I could leave and I would just go out there and hold a flashlight while people got their autograph signed or take a picture. People would be so nervous meeting him that they would be trembling and couldn't function their camera. I'm friends with a girl on Facebook now that she jammed her camera up and I took her photo and emailed it to her, and her name's Patty, and I'm still her friend to this day. And it's all, she every year Ronnie's passing becomes a anniversary. She'll post, her photo. This was taken by Richard, and just he really did touch people, and people appreciate. He appreciated people too. I think, a lot more sincerely than just the average rock star who feels like they're so narcissistic that they're owed it. I'm owed this big house. I'm owed this $1 million. I mean, Ronnie, I don't think Ronnie ever felt like that, even though he's more talented and did deserve it. But so
Yeah.
Ronnie said the reason he loves his fans so much is because of the way he saw Blackmore treat
yeah,
his fans.
yeah. He said he learned what not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who told me the story. I don't know if it was you, Richard, or somebody told me the story about when you remember Dio did a tour once with Ingve and Doro.
I saw that
and he saw some kid get blown off by Ingve, and
Yeah.
Ronnie went over and cussed Ingve out and told him to go be nice. Were you the one that said that?
Yeah. The kid was in a wheelchair.
Wow.
And the kid was waiting like at the Masquerade Club. It's a club, at the old location in Atlanta on North Avenue, and it was Ingve, Ronnie. I don't think it was Doro here. I don't remember her. But maybe. But I definitely know it was Ingve and Ronnie. And this kid was waiting and had an Ingve CD, and they had bike rack around the stage, so then people would come backstage were dressing rooms, and they would come out the bike rack and go out to the bar, and Ingve come out, and this kid held up a CD of a trilogy or whatever it was, and Ingve just shoved him, and his chair rolled back, and like get up, kept walking through the bike rack, and Ronnie was right behind him. Ronnie seen it and saw the kid's look on his face was like just shock. He was total shock that Ingve shoved him and refused to sign an autograph. And Ronnie seen it and looked at the kid and pulled his wheelchair back up, and he was like, "You see that asshole? That fucking asshole thinks he's Richie." And he was still in earshot. And he said, "That asshole thinks he's the new Richie Blackmore. He's not. He's nothing but a fucking asshole. And he thinks I'm going to play on his record. He's wrong. I'll never play on some asshole's record like that." And he said, so,
Yeah.
yeah, that was me.
That's
I remember that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Did he go say anything to Ingve about it or anything, or did he
I
never
don't know.
change?
Not that I
Yeah,
saw, but yeah.
I'm surprised Ronnie didn't go over there and scold Ingve, and Ingve's like looking down, pouting,
Yeah.
like I just got scolded by the god of
What
metal.
tour was that? Yeah. Do you know what tour that was? What?
Man, it was
That was
God.
magical. I
Yeah,
think
it was
magic.
late. It was at late '90s or something.
It
Yeah,
was
Okay.
2000. It was 2000.
Yeah, 2000 was
2000.
magic because I knew the upstaging driver, and I'd already worked for upstaging. So
I
yeah,
saw that. I saw that tour at the 930 Club. It was Dio and Ingve and Doro. That Dio would always play. I saw him there with King's X and Hammerfall, and
wow.
I remember he's doing "Don't Talk to Strangers," and we're standing there rocking out, and I heard somebody just singing like hell over my back of my shoulder, and turn around, it's Doug Pennick from King's X, and he's singing all the words, just jamming out, man.
Wow.
He loved Dio, man. Yeah, cool
Yeah,
shit.
I've only seen Doro Pesh once, that in to my recollection, and it was in '88. It was Warlock, Sanctuary, and Megadeth were on the
Megadeth.
so far so good so
I
well.
saw that tour.
That's the
Yeah,
one time
but
I saw it.
those shows 2000 and stuff, like I'm saying, Dio, King's X, Hammerfall, I mean, there may be 250 people there on a weeknight for it. I mean, it's nothing like now. It'd be
Yeah,
packed,
I know, man.
Yeah, just they were kind of dark times for metal, but I'm glad I was there and a part of it, because hey, you had a better chance of being up close, and I got to hang out with Dio that night after the show, and it was
Yeah,
great.
there was a club in Atlanta in the late '90s called it the Outer Edge, and it was a full blown bar with pool tables and a bar for drinking. And I saw Ronnie there on that tour they called the to Hull and Back, and it was Simon Wright and Ronnie. Fuck, I can't remember who I was in the band. I think Tracy G was still in the band. I'm not sure, but it was a full on bar, and they had chicken wings, and Ronnie was playing, and you had a waitress walking around giving people their chicken wings, and it was just like, I was so
Like
sad.
so he's playing at a sports bar, basically,
Yeah,
is what it
yeah,
was.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't even a big sports bar. Like nowadays, they have Buffalo Wild Wings, which are massive. It wasn't even that. It was fucking half the size of a Buffalo Wild Wings. And what's sad, this would have been 90. I was in the band, so it was like 98 or 97. And I was there like looking at their menu, and I flipped the menu over, and like 2 weeks earlier, Saxon was there. I'm like, oh, I miss Saxon.
Man, you missed Saxon at the sports bar. Wow.
I
I
had the
saw I saw Dio once at a club in Maryland that I only went there once, and it was for a Dio show, and it was called Club Exhale, and it was like a
oh man,
dance club. They had all these crazy lights, but part of the stage they had this giant dragon that was 3D made dragon that was across the back of the stage, and smoke would come out of its mouth. So it's like instant Dio stage set. I mean, because he was making jokes about, hey, we didn't even have to bring our own stage set. It was already here. It was perfect for a Dio show. That was around Magica as well, because I got some photos from that show, and it was Jimmy Bain and Craig Goldie and
yeah,
Simon Wright. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that show at Outer Edge. Afterwards, I was talking to Willie Fife, and Simon Wright walked up, and I was like, um, I was by the bus, and Willie's like, "You want to say hey to Ronnie Wright? Give him a second." I'm like, no hurries, man. And I'm sitting there, and Simon Wright walked up and said hey to Willie, and then I was like, "Hey, Simon, how's it going, man?" He's like, "Good." And I was like, "What have you been up to? Hadn't heard from you for years." What have I been up to? I've been in fucking UFO for 7 fucking years, touring the fucking world. That's what I've been fucking up to. And I'm like, sorry.
He's a trip, man. Yeah, he walked out to my car. I gave him a ride once, and he walked out to my car, and this is when he was in Dio, and I had a UFO sticker on my car, and he goes, "You know what that stands for? Unfucking organized." He had no love for Schenker, that's for sure.
No, nobody does except fans.
Yeah.
But
he had to work with him.
Yeah, we could do a Dio show, man, because I got, it's just, I mean, again, just amazing person,
Yeah,
You
let's
know.
have him back on and let's do a deal related show.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
do a Dio.
Yeah, man, for sure.
That'll be
Cool,
good.
guys.
All right, Richard, Tony,
I appreciate you having me.
thank you so
Yeah,
much
man.
for joining us. And thank you, everybody who's watching now. Schmack 'em a gob. Till next time.